This week's video is ESG Reporting 101, how to read one and how to understand one. So let's dive in. An ESG report covers environmental, social governance, and it's usually produced by a company. So the company decides that it wants to share internally with employees or externally with stakeholders like customers, partners, and maybe even investors or bankers, what they're doing to help the environment or to help society and how they're governing everything. So this could be things like maybe their baseline metrics for their greenhouse gas emissions, or maybe a little bit about a new policy on human rights or modern slavery. So why would you need to have one as a business? Well, as I keep mentioning, businesses are getting pressure from their biggest customers, from bankers, from investors, and even their employees to have a sustainability and an ESG strategy. And what comes with that is, it's great you have one. Now tell us what it is. So it's very important to have an ESG report. Typically, it's a PDF that you put on your website. Maybe you print it, maybe you don't, but it's easily accessible for people to just grab, download. Sometimes it's 3 pages, sometimes it's 152 pages. Depends what content you have in there. This is the stuff that I want you to look for. Number one is, do they have a message from their leader? Is this from top down? Do they have messages from employees top up? Who's created this report? Who's driving this report? Thing to look for, number two, is it all words? Is it all kind of marketing jargon with nice pictures, but no data? Or is there data in it? Do they actually expose a baseline year with all of their metrics like diversity and inclusion numbers, energy consumption? Are they displaying numbers and targets? Maybe they want to reduce it or get to net zero by 2040. So that's the second thing to look for. And the third thing to look for is, do they have a plan to get there? So it's one thing to have nice graphics and a nice PDF and nice targets, but do they talk about how they're going to get there? All right, so I chose Apple for this one. I went to Apple's Environmental Social Governance page, ESG, and I get to click Read Apple's ESG report. And what happens is it opens up a big PDF for me. So at the top, environmental social governance, there's so much in this report, but look, there's a letter from the CEO. This is coming from top down. Here's the report highlights. They talk about carbon neutral for corporate emissions. They've been doing it. They want to be 100% at some point. You can go and continue reading it. They've reduced their overall emissions by 40%. So see, we already kind of checked the 2 boxes that I talked about. The first is, we're learning from the leader that this is an initiative that matters to the entire business. And 2, we're seeing numbers and data right at the beginning, not just marketing and fluff. They even talk about how we work to prevent forced labor in our supply chain. So that could be child labor, modern slavery. They talk about ways to detect that and ways to remove that. Then they talk about their customers and how they approach their customers in an inclusive design for the S in ESG, for educating more people around the world, for promoting health. And then they're a force for good. So this is communities. How are they helping their communities? What are they donating? How are they educating people around the world? I like this number, 40% female and 39% non-STEM students in 2021 took the Academy course. They have an affordable housing initiative. So see, there's real numbers in here, not just jargon that somebody pulled from an AI tool, for example. And in their appendix, they also show some awards and recognitions that they have achieved. They align themselves with a few of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So how do you read an ESG report? Well, it's kind of like a cupcake. Some people take the cupcake and just eat the whole thing. Some people lick the icing and then eat the rest. Some people pull the bottom off the cupcake and make it sort of like a cookie. So I usually go right to the back. I like to look at the data. I'm kind of a nerd that way. I like to see, what is their baseline year? What standards or regulations are they using, or frameworks? I like to see where they align themselves. I like to see if things are reducing or not. And I definitely read the fine print to see if there's any caveats that we should know about. For example, in a lot of ESG reports, COVID-19 was a caveat that they brought up because a lot of the workforce wasn't driving to work every day, for example. Then what I do is go back to the top and I like to see, what were the impacts on stakeholders? So what did they do for the community? How is this impacting the way they use materials? What is their forced child labor policy? That sort of thing. So that's typically how I read it. I go to the bottom, and then I work my way back up to the top. So the report is done, and let's say it's up on your website and out on your employee portal. So then what happens? Well, your investors are going to read it. Hopefully your employees read it too. Definitely encourage them to read it. What I've seen at a company is the report goes live, and then they do some kind of a lunch and learn or webinar session for all of their employees, and they go through the highlights so that everybody's on the same page, because you don't want to spend all this time doing it and then just have this great report sitting on a shelf. You want to start actioning it. So number one is communicate about it to all of your stakeholders. And then two is make sure the owners of individual initiatives driving toward your new targets know about them. Make sure they're held accountable, and that maybe monthly or quarterly they disclose progress toward the new goals that are out there, or KPIs. All right, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great week. See you later.